Retractor. Clamp. Hurry, the aorta is rupturing. We need to close this now.
The operating room went silent when the monitor flatlined. Time of death. Don't. The word cracked across the room like a rifle shot. Gloved hands froze mid-motion. Stainless steel trays trembled from the sudden stillness. The ventilator hissed once, then again. Slow and mechanical. Outside the hors doors, boots pounded down the corridor. The chief surgeon didn't look up. Call it. A young voice cut through the sterile air. Steady. Controlled. Sir, with respect, no. The entire team turned. The rookie nurse stood at the foot of the table, chest rising fast beneath her scrubs, eyes locked on the body of a decorated Marine colonel bleeding out beneath the lights. Sweat traced down her temple, but her hands didn't shake. The chief surgeon finally faced her. Rank pins gleamed on his cap. Decades in uniform. A reputation carved in war zones. You don't get with respect right now, he said quietly. You get out of my operating room. She didn't move. We still have a femoral pulse, she said. It's thready, but it's there. The pressure dropped after the clamp slipped. We can regain it. That clamp slipped because the vessel shredded, he snapped. We're done. The anesthesiologist shifted uncomfortably. No one spoke. The nurse stepped closer to the table. Sir, if we open another line and push. Enough. His voice hardened. You are a probationary nurse. I am the chief of surgery on a United States military base. When I declare a casualty, it is declared. The monitor beeped once. Weak. Uneven. The nurse's jaw tightened. He's not gone, she said. The chief surgeon turned to the circulating nurse. Security. The word hung heavy. 2 MPs appeared at the door. The rookie nurse didn't look at them. She looked at the colonel. Then she did the one thing no one in that room expected. She reached for the scalpel. The scalpel never touched skin. A gloved hand caught her wrist midair. Not rough, not gentle, just controlled. Stand down. The words came low this time. Measured. Dangerous. The rookie nurse didn't fight him. She didn't need to. The message had already been sent to the room, to the MPs at the door, to every set of eyes watching the standoff unfold beneath the surgical lights. The chief surgeon released her slowly, as if proving he could. Escort her out. The MPs hesitated. They weren't used to stepping into an operating room. Not during a procedure. Not with a colonel on the table. Their boots shifted against the polished floor, leaving faint scuffs in a place built for sterility and obedience. The nurse removed her hands from the sterile field herself. Protocol first. Even now, she stepped back, eyes never leaving the patient. Sir, she said evenly, you're calling it at 7 minutes without attempting internal cardiac massage. A murmur moved through the staff. Quiet, controlled, dangerous in its own way. The chief surgeon straightened. He had deployed twice before most of the residents had graduated medical school. Field hospitals, mass casualty tents. He had made decisions that lived with him in the dark. He wore command the way others wore scrubs. Naturally. You will address me as colonel in this room, he said, and you will not question my judgment in front of my team. The correction wasn't about etiquette. It was about order. Yes, Colonel, she replied, but she didn't apologize. Outside the glass observation panel, officers had begun to gather. Word traveled fast when a senior Marine officer was involved. Dress blues, service uniforms, gold insignia catching fluorescent light. Inside, the air fell heavier. The anesthesiologist cleared his throat. We still have electrical activity. The chief surgeon shot him a look that silenced the suggestion. The nurse noticed. She noticed everything. That was what had set her apart during training at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center. Not brilliance, not speed, awareness. She tracked small changes, oxygen saturation drifting half a point, a tremor in a patient's jaw, the sound of a clamp settling wrong. She had arrived at this base hospital 3 weeks ago. Still probationary, still watched, still expected to listen more than speak. The name stitched above her pocket read Daniels. No rank displayed. Nurses didn't carry it the way line officers did. Authority here came differently. Through experience, through trust, through who vouched for you. No one in this room had vouched for her yet. The chief surgeon removed his gloves with a snap. Time of death, 14:23. The words felt final. A corpseman near the wall swallowed hard. He had assisted in Afghanistan. He had seen bodies stacked under tarps. But something about losing a man in a controlled operating room felt worse, less forgivable. The nurse's gaze shifted to the monitor again. A flicker, small, irregular, but there. "Colonel," she said quietly, permission to speak freely. He turned slowly. "You've spoken enough." "With respect, sir." "Enough." The room froze again. Hierarchy in a military hospital didn't differ much from a battlefield chain of command. Orders flowed downward. Accountability flowed upward. And public disagreement, especially from someone still earning her place, was a fracture in the structure. The MPs stepped closer. One of them recognized her. She had treated his partner last week after a training accident. Stayed late. Refused to hand the case off. He remembered the way she double-checked the scans herself instead of waiting for radiology. He hesitated. The chief surgeon noticed the hesitation. "Remove her." The nurse finally looked away from the table. Not at the MPs, at the chief surgeon. "You taught at Uniformed Services University of the Health Sciences, didn't you?" she asked. The question was so unexpected it broke the rhythm of the room. His jaw tightened. "This is not the time." "You lectured on combat trauma protocols, advanced vascular salvage." A few of the residents exchanged glances. They had heard those lectures. Recorded, required. The nurse's voice remained calm. "You said once that the difference between a lost limb and a saved one is often 60 seconds of refusal." Silence pressed in. The chief surgeon's eyes hardened. "You are out of line." "Yes, sir." No sarcasm, just acknowledgement. The colonel on the table gave a faint shudder, barely perceptible, but it was there. The anesthesiologist looked down at his screen again, pressures attempting to rebound.
The chief surgeon didn't move. He was calculating. Risk, optics, authority. If he reversed now, in front of officers watching through glass, after declaring time of death, what did that signal? Doubt? Weakness? Or discipline? The nurse stepped back fully now, giving space. Not retreating. Just yielding the physical ground. "I'm not challenging your authority, Colonel," she said carefully. "I'm asking you to reconsider your timeline." The phrasing mattered. In the military, tone could decide careers. One of the senior residents shifted forward. "Sir, we can reopen." The suggestion hung there. The chief surgeon looked at his team, at the MPs, at the officers beyond the glass, then back at the nurse. 3 weeks on base. Probationary. No reputation to protect. No political leverage. Just conviction. "You think I'm quitting early?" he asked her quietly. "I think," she replied, choosing each word, "that you don't quit." The statement landed differently than an accusation would have. It appealed to something older than rank. The monitor beeped again. Weak. But undeniable. The room waited. And for the first time since the confrontation began, the power in the room didn't feel entirely one-sided. The beep stopped again. Flat. Clean. Unforgiving. The chief surgeon didn't look at the monitor this time.
"Seal him," he said.
No hesitation. The anesthesiologist opened his mouth, then closed it. The resident reached for the suture tray. The rookie nurse stood motionless at the edge of the room, hands clasped behind her back now, posture rigid. Military.
Contained.
The MPs waited for another order. "Escort her out," the chief surgeon repeated, louder this time. Not for the room, for the officers behind the glass. The door opened. Boots entered sterile space. A breach. Every head turned. The humiliation wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. One of the MPs gently touched her elbow. Ma'am.
She didn't resist.
She stripped off her gloves first, dropped them precisely into the biohazard bin, removed her mask, folded it, set it down, controlled movements. Then she walked. The door swung open. Outside, the corridor had filled. Uniforms lined both walls. Navy, Marine Corps, a few Army liaisons. News of a senior Marine colonel crashing mid-surgery had spread fast across the base. Whispers cut off as she emerged between two MPs. The chief surgeon followed seconds later, removing his cap, face carved from stone. He interfered? A Marine captain asked sharply. No, the chief surgeon replied evenly. She did. Every eye shifted to her. She kept her chin level. She attempted to countermand a direct medical order, he continued. In my operating room. The word "my" hung in the air. The Marine captain's expression hardened. That true, nurse? She didn't look at him. She answered the senior officer. Yes, sir. No defense. No explanation. Just confirmation. A murmur moved through the hallway. The chief surgeon adjusted his cuffs. She will be relieved, pending review. The words were clinical, but the effect wasn't. The charge nurse arrived at a near run, breath shallow. Sir. She's off rotation, the chief surgeon said. Effective immediately. The nurse finally blinked. Just once. Her jaw tightened. That was all. Turning her badge, the charge nurse whispered to her, not meeting her eyes. The hallway felt smaller now. The rookie nurse reached to her collar, unclipped her ID. The plastic snapped softly as it detached. She held it out. The charge nurse hesitated before taking it. That hesitation was noticed. The chief surgeon saw it. And Lieutenant, he added without looking at the charge nurse, you may consider this a counseling on maintaining discipline within your staff. The rebuke landed publicly. The lieutenant straightened instantly. Yes, Colonel. The rookie nurse's hand dropped to her side. A gurney rolled past them from another wing. Routine movement. Life continuing while one ended. The Marine captain stepped closer to the chief surgeon. Is he gone? Yes. No elaboration. The captain's shoulders squared. Understood. He glanced once at the nurse, then dismissed her with a look that said enough. The MP stepped aside. She was no longer under escort. She was simply removed. An hour later, she stood outside the administrative office of the hospital commander. The waiting area smelled of antiseptic and old coffee. Framed photos lined the wall, deployment images, commendation ceremonies, a handshake at the Pentagon. Power documented in photographs. She remained standing. Across the room, two surgical residents sat rigidly, whispering. Why would she do that? Career suicide. She's been here 3 weeks. The door opened. Daniels. She entered. The hospital commander sat behind a wide desk. Silver hair. Calm eyes. Rank heavy on his shoulders. The chief surgeon stood near the window, hands clasped behind his back. He didn't turn. Explain yourself, the commander said. No anger. Just expectation. The rookie nurse kept her voice even. I believe there was sustained electrical activity, sir. And I believed further intervention was warranted. The chief surgeon exhaled through his nose. You believed, he repeated. Yes, sir. The commander folded his hands. Are you aware that publicly challenging a senior medical officer in front of line command undermines confidence in this facility? Yes, sir. Are you aware that doing so during the attempted resuscitation of a decorated Marine colonel compounds that damage? Yes, sir. The repetition didn't sound defensive. It sounded steady. The chief surgeon finally turned. You cited one of my lectures. Yes, sir. You selectively interpreted it. No, sir. A beat. Silence tightened. You're on probation, the chief surgeon said. 3 weeks into your first active assignment. And you presume to correct combat surgical judgment in a live trauma? She didn't answer immediately. The commander noticed. Well, I presumed nothing, sir, she said. I observed. The word hung in the air. Observed. Not assumed.
Not judged.
The chief surgeon's jaw flexed. The commander leaned back slightly. Colonel, did you recheck for mechanical error? The question was subtle, but it shifted direction. The chief surgeon's eyes flickered. We had catastrophic vascular compromise. That wasn't my question. A pause.
No.
The commander nodded once. The rookie nurse remained still. The commander tapped a file on his desk. The colonel's wife is on base. That changed the room. The chief surgeon's posture stiffened. She's been informed? Yes. Of the timeline? Yes. The commander looked at the nurse. Do you still stand by your objection? Yes, sir. No tremor. The chief surgeon stepped forward now. You understand that if review finds no basis for your interruption, your career here is over. Yes, sir. And if review supports my call, he added, you won't work in another military hospital again. The threat wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. She absorbed it without visible reaction. I understand. The commander watched both of them carefully. Two different kinds of certainty. Until review, the commander said finally, Nurse Daniels is suspended from surgical duty. The chief surgeon nodded once. Controlled. Decisive. The nurse saluted. He did not return it. Outside the office, word had already spread. Phones buzzed. Whispers moved down hallways. The story was simple now. A rookie nurse had challenged the chief surgeon. A colonel was dead, and someone had overstepped. The hierarchy had responded, and the message was clear. By evening, the hospital felt different. Quieter. Not less busy, just quieter in the way a unit gets after a reprimand has passed through it. Conversations shortened. Doors closed more softly. Even the rolling carts seemed to move with restraint. Nurse Daniels sat alone in the break room, still in scrubs, badge lanyard empty around her neck. The plastic clip tapped faintly against the metal table every time she shifted. No one told her to leave. No one told her to stay. Across the room, a muted television replayed national headlines. The sound was off. Closed captions crawled across the bottom of the screen, words about defense budgets and overseas deployments. No one was watching. A corpsman entered, saw her, hesitated, then chose the coffee machine instead of the refrigerator beside her. His movements were careful, measured. You okay? He asked without looking up. Yes. The answer was automatic. He nodded once and left without another word. Her hands rested flat on the table. Still steady. She flexed her fingers once, as if checking for tremor. There was none. Down the hall, in surgical conference room B, the chief surgeon stood before a small group of senior staff. The blinds were partially drawn. The lights were dimmer than usual. We followed protocol, he said. No one disagreed. A resident cleared his throat. Sir, telemetry logs are still running from the OR. IT hasn't archived them yet. The chief surgeon's gaze shifted. And, just noting. The room went still. Is there a concern? The chief surgeon asked. No, sir. Another silence. The anesthesiologist sat rigid, hands folded. He had been in that room when the nurse spoke up. He had seen the flicker on the monitor. He had also seen the chief surgeon's face when the officers gathered behind the glass. He kept his eyes down. We cannot afford uncertainty, the chief surgeon continued. Not with this patient. Not publicly. The phrasing lingered. Not incorrect. Just careful. Near midnight, two Marines stood outside the ICU viewing window. The colonel's body had been transferred there temporarily before final arrangements. Machines still surrounded him. Out of respect, the equipment hadn't been fully disconnected yet. One of the Marines leaned closer to the glass. You hear about the nurse? He asked quietly. Yeah. She tried to keep him going. That's what they're saying. A long pause. You think she was wrong? The other Marine didn't answer right away. He watched the monitor inside the room. The line remained flat, but a nurse inside adjusted something on the machine, frowning. It's not my lane, he finally said. They both stepped back. In the administrative wing, the hospital commander reviewed the initial incident report. The language was precise. Interruption. Countermand. Failure to observe chain of command. He read it twice. Then he turned to the telemetry addendum. There was a gap. 7 seconds. Between declared flatline and final confirmation. 7 seconds where the monitor registered artifact. Or something else. He didn't label it. He simply circled it with a pen. At 0100 hours, the anesthesiologist returned to the ICU alone. He told the overnight nurse he'd forgotten something. She didn't question it. He stepped inside the room and approached the monitor. He replayed the log manually. The waveform flickered during the final minute. Not strong, not clean, but patterned. He leaned closer. Electrical activity, he muttered under his breath. A soft knock came at the door. He startled slightly. It was Nurse Daniels. Out of uniform now. Hair pulled back. Civilian jacket over scrubs. She shouldn't have been there. You're suspended, he said quietly. I know. She didn't step inside. She stayed at the threshold. Did you see it? She asked. He didn't answer. She didn't push. Instead, she looked at the colonel. Then at the monitor. Then back at him. Pressure drop wasn't linear, she said softly. It spiked once before it crashed. He exhaled. You're not helping yourself. I'm not trying to. Silence. He glanced at the waveform again. It could have been interference, he said. Yes. It could have been residual discharge. Yes. It could have been nothing. Yes. She held his gaze. But it wasn't clean, she added. No accusation. Just fact. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. They both straightened. The hospital commander appeared at the end of the corridor.
He stopped when he saw them.
Neither moved. After a moment, he approached. You're not on duty, he said to Daniels. No, sir. Then why are you here? She didn't answer immediately. The commander waited. I wanted to make sure the log wasn't overwritten, she said. The honesty landed without drama. The anesthesiologist looked away. The commander studied her for a long moment. You think something was missed? Yes, sir. Do you have proof? No, sir. Just instinct. No, sir. Another pause. Observation. The word again. The commander turned to the anesthesiologist. Doctor? He swallowed once. There was activity, he said carefully. Minimal, but present. The commander nodded slowly. And you didn't speak up during the procedure. A subtle shift in tone. The anesthesiologist stiffened. It was the colonel's call. Was it correct? Silence stretched. I don't know. The commander looked through the glass at the body, then back at Daniels. You understand what happens if you're wrong. Yes, sir. You understand what happens if you're right. She didn't respond to that, because she did. The commander nodded once. Go home, nurse. She held his gaze for half a second longer. Then she left. Back in conference room B, the chief surgeon stood alone now. He replayed the moment in his mind. The nurse's voice. You don't quit. The flicker on the monitor. The officers watching. He reached for his phone, then stopped. Instead, he opened the official after-action review template. He began typing. Measured. Controlled. His